Good morning, Mrs. Lam, Hong Kong Free Press. 2 short questions. Amnesty International.
One question, please.
Okay. Amnesty International has followed Human Rights Watch in leaving the city, citing the security law crackdown. What's your response, please?
Well, since the enactment of the national security law, different associations and various individuals have explained or justified their actions on the basis of a national security law. But there is no way that one could prove that this is exactly the reason for their taking such a decision. So similarly, I could not comment on this explanation given by an organization about their departure from Hong Kong. But what I could say here is under basic law, I think it's Article 27, the freedom of association, the freedom of assembly, like the freedom of speech and so on, are being guaranteed. So no organization should be worried about their legitimate operations in Hong Kong, but it has to be done in accordance with the law. Now, the third point I want to make is when people try to allege and accuse the national security law for posing threats or intimidation on people, one should read very carefully the national security law, particularly the article which says that we would, at the same time, safeguard the rights and individuals enjoyed by people under the Bill of Rights Ordinance and also the various clauses in the international covenants as applied to Hong Kong. But the national security law's primary objectives is not just to arrest people and punish people. It also has a very laudable objective to prevent and suppress. So if there are individuals, organizations that have been using Hong Kong to spread news or to engage in activities that they are worried because these activities are sort of undermining the national security of Hong Kong, then of course they would need to be worried, because the national security law is not just about arresting people who have committed a crime. It is also about trying to prevent and suppress the activities which will have that impact of undermining national security. But on the other hand, may I draw your attention to some facts? Now, I said I could not comment on speculations or excuses, but I could show you the facts. The facts is, according to the latest survey by the Census and Statistics Department and Invest Hong Kong, as at June this year, the number of overseas and mainland companies that have set up offices, headquarters in Hong Kong has not reduced. In fact, it was another record-breaking number of over 9,000 such overseas and mainland companies that have established in Hong Kong. And I could also show you the fact that some important legal organizations at the regional or international level have also established offices in Hong Kong in a legal hub set up by the Department of Justice. And last week, we have a very important worldwide maritime conference in Hong Kong, and this International Council of Shipping, the first office outside of a headquarters, is set up in Hong Kong. So these are the facts which will give you the confidence that the national security law has not prevented or horrified people from doing their legitimate business in Hong Kong.
下一條，呢位男記者唔該。
Mrs. Lam, I have a question about Hong Kong's international reputation as a free and open city. Of course, just now you mentioned there are some good achievements. I think no one would dispute that. But because of the border restrictions, many foreign business leaders, including the CEO of Financial Markets Association, said going forward, Hong Kong's status as an international financial center is increasingly at risk. And also at the same time, the government is launching this reform of the legal aid system, and some people said it go against the basic laws guarantee that people are free to choose their own representation. So I just want to ask you, especially because Hong Kong has made the achievement that you explained just now, going forward, are you concerned that this situation could change for the worse? Thank you.
A simple answer is I'm not concerned. As you have realized since the announcement of the 2021 policy address on the 6th of October, I've been speaking on many, many public occasions and taking various interviews of the media. And the recurring theme in what I have said on those occasions is I'm full of confidence about Hong Kong's future. Because one, Hong Kong is back on the right track of one country, two systems. There need not be the usual worries of Hong Kong becoming a gaping hole in national security. Secondly, is we have an improved electoral system which will return politicians or legislative council members who are patriotic. So they will not do anything to endanger national security. They could still ask us to be accountable for the things we do. They could still refuse to support our policies and legislation. But ultimately, all these are done in the best interest of Hong Kong. And thirdly, is one has seen how a more rational legislative council has managed to do a lot of good things for the people of Hong Kong, including some very important legislation, such as allowing non-locally trained doctors to come to Hong Kong in order to reduce the waiting time and to improve Hong Kong's healthcare system. So all these are the basis of my confidence going forward, let alone the staunch support of the Central People's Government as reflected in the 14th Five-Year Plan, the Qianhai Plan, the Macau, the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area Outline Development Plan. So all these are very positive elements that any corporation, whether local, mainland, or overseas, will definitely take into account in deciding whether they want to set up an office or do business in Hong Kong. Now, since you mentioned the legal aid review, which I understand will be discussed in the Legislative Council panel, the AJLS panel this afternoon, this review was prompted by me in answering a question in Legislative Council in June this year. I am very appreciative of the Chief Secretary for Administration and the Director of Legal Aid for completing this exercise within a matter of a few months and come up with a package of very sensible, pragmatic, and balanced proposals, whether in offering criminal legal aid or civil legal aid, as well as legal aid in respect of judicial review cases. So as set in the review's objectives, one is to prevent the monopoly of legal aid cases by a small group of lawyers, barristers, and solicitors together. Secondly is to enhance the management, the case management of legally aided cases. And third is to enhance the transparency of the entire legal aid system. And I don't think anybody would dispute these are very good objectives, and hence the package has been approved or endorsed by the Legal Aid Services Council. And I'm sure in this afternoon's legislative panel, it will also be very positively received by members of the Legislative Council. Now, the last point about travel without restrictions, this is a very difficult subject. As I have explained on many occasions, we are caught in a sort of a dilemma because in order to resume some quarantine-free travel with the mainland, we have to ensure that our anti-COVID-19 practices are more in line with the mainland practices, so that the mainland authorities will have the level of confidence to enable Hong Kong people to go into the mainland without being subject to the 14-day plus 7-day quarantine. And in the anti-COVID-19 strategy, controlling the import of possible cases is a very important part of that strategy. So if Hong Kong were to loosen the border controls for people arriving from overseas, or adopt what other countries have done, so-called to live with the COVID-19 virus, then the chances of resuming travel with the mainland will be reduced. It is a very simple hypothesis. And so I can only say to those representing the financial sector that we have to look at it in context. The context is Hong Kong's primary advantage lies in being the gateway to the mainland of China. If businesses established in Hong Kong could not go into the mainland, I think it will significantly reduce the attraction of Hong Kong as an international business hub and an international financial center. So at the moment, the Hong Kong SAR government's strategy is to try to work very hard to resume some travel with the mainland, especially for the business people. And then if the global situation stabilizes, if confirmed cases in the countries where people want to come to Hong Kong come down, then of course we will put them not in the Group A countries, subject to 21 days. They will come Group B with 14 days after full vaccination, or better still, maybe they could come down to the Group C with only a 7-day quarantine, which I understand will sort of provide much relief to the financial sector. But the current situation is we have not yet reached that stage, whether locally with the mainland or globally. 多謝大家嚇。
林太，香港街係咪犯法㗎？